Now for global business updates, Rotus Oderi joins us from our Abuja studios. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Fry. Good morning to the crew. Good morning to all our viewers out there. So we begin with in Asia, in South Korea, where they are looking to the future and they want to support their battery industry. If you think about the companies that dominate the sector in South Korea, there's only a few of them, the Samsungs and SDIs of the world. So they are planning a $29 billion boost to their battery industry because the demand for electric vehicles around the world over the next 5 years. So that's what they're doing over in Asia. We move on from there to the IMF. The IMF has essentially doled out the next tranche of its support programs for a number of countries, 2 of them in particular. Remember Sri Lanka, Dr. Abati has talked about them a lot in terms of the default on their debt. They got a $3 billion assistance from the IMF. So the next tranche is $337 million. Also, Bangladesh is getting $700 million from the IMF that will be doled out. So assistance continues. Both countries have been, foreign reserves falling, inflation climbing. They've been in serious trouble for both countries. We move on from there to Argentina. Luis Caputo, economy minister, had a broadcast to the Argentine people yesterday. And guess what? I want to hear Rufai's response to this. They devalued the peso by 50%. So they've announced the devaluation of the peso from 400 pesos per dollar to 800. However, on the parallel markets over in Argentina, the peso is trading at 1,045 as of yesterday. So even with the devaluation of 50%, they are still on the currency is still not matching where the parallel market is. They want to cut public spending and also end, or rather reduce, energy and transportation subsidies. Where have you heard this story before? Over in Argentina. It's very interesting that as we stay with Argentina, this chief financial officer of Procter & Gamble, when he announced that they were dissolving Nigeria's operations, or their operations in Nigeria, they mentioned 2 countries where they were having issues. They mentioned Argentina and they mentioned Nigeria because of the foreign exchange issue. But this is a rite of passage for any country that has been subsidizing its exchange rate. You've got to move the price. So that's what Argentina is doing. So we roll on. From there, we come to Israel. Puma has announced that they are terminating their football sponsorship their sponsorship of Israel's national football team. The partnership was signed back in 2018. Puma says the decision was taken last year because they faced a lot of backlash from pro-Palestinian groups. Their offices, their shops rather, have faced demonstrations around the world because of their partnership with Israel. Famously, Ben & Jerry's, if you've ever been tried their ice cream. When I lived in New York, I enjoyed Ben & Jerry's ice cream a lot. Ben & Jerry's pulled out of Israel. They gave it a licensee to do distribution because of backlash. But anyway, Puma says that it's because of commercial reasons. They're also ending their partnership with Serbia. So it will end by effective end of 2024. They said it's commercial reasons. When last did Israel make it to the World Cup? It was 1970. They were knocked out by Mexico. They only scored, I think, 1 goal. 9.7 million people there, as far as merchandise sales and so on. But that's what they're saying. It's not because of what's going on with the whole issues, with the political issues with Gaza and everything else. So that's what we're seeing with Puma. Coming to Nigeria. Now, this is very, very interesting. Today, of course, we're going to be at the Yaradua Center here in Abuja. The World Bank is releasing its Nigeria Development Update. They release it twice a year. So we're looking forward to checking out this report and talking to the Minister of Finance, CBN Governor, and so on, if they show up. So here is the Minister of Power. He was held, I think, as a 3-day retreat going on currently. In fact, this is on the cover of today's This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record, where I'm sure Mr. Efeni will talk about this. So maybe you've touched on it already. Major issue in the sector, power sector, according to the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, is pricing of gas utilized by Gencos in US dollars, a hugely volatile variable that significantly affects the pricing of electricity to end users. So the cover of today's This Day newspaper, you can see the headline there saying that Nigeria is considering moving away from dollar-denominated gas. A more preferable option is to ensure that the gas utilized by Gencos is traded in Naira so as to better manage the foreign currency related inflationary trends that challenge the faithful application of the multi-year tariff order methodology. If we look at Nigeria's power generation sources, right? The minister talked about it in terms of a chart where you can see where we get our power from. So 70% is from thermal plants, so that's gas, right? 27.3% is from hydro, and then the minister said about 2.2% is from solar and everything else. So if we stay here, this is the reason why he's saying that you need to go to Naira traded gas. But this is the problem. Gas is denominated in dollars. Even if you want to move to a Naira trading or Naira pricing of gas, it still has to be at the equivalent of where the dollar is priced. So now that brings you back to your exchange rate issues. And I need to point one more thing out. The Minister of Power said in early November last month that the president has decided not to remove electricity subsidies because of the cost of living impact on Nigerians. So in addition to the exchange rates where they devalued, they didn't liberalize it, that was devalued. And then also the fuel subsidies, which was a partial fuel subsidy, because if you look at where the prices are now, diesel is much higher than petrol. If you say you do not want to remove electricity subsidies, you sign an Electricity Act, and you have allowed states to be able to generate their own power. Who is going to come into the sector to invest in power? Who's going to do this if it is not appropriately priced? That's our updates for today.
Well, Rotus, will come back to you, but before we do so, there is breaking news. We understand that there has been the demolition of the River State House of Assembly, and that it is ongoing. The reasons for the demolition are yet to be revealed, but this may not be far from the recent crisis that rocked the House of Assembly. Yesterday, a High Court sitting in Port Harcourt, under the seal of Honorable Justice M.W. Danagogo, restrained Martin Namewule and Dumle Mahal from parading themselves, nor interfering with the activities of the Right Honorable Edison Ogerenye Ehie as Speaker of the River State House of Assembly. The presiding judge, in an ex parte motion, warned against the use of thugs and police officers to forcefully gain access to the premises of the River State House of Assembly complex. Okay. Well, it gets curiouser and curiouser in River State. Now they've gone to destroy the locus. Very interesting, and I'm sure they destroyed the maze along with it.
This game is getting
quite a sordid drama in River State.
I mean, this game is getting more interesting, Dr. Bati. So anyway, on the scoreline, it's still 2-2. I mean, so this is part of Fubara's means of not to get impeached. But let's see how this pans out in the coming days. But Rotusia, you wanted my take on devaluation of the peso. Yesterday, I took out time to go through Javier Milei's speech once again, Inauguration Day speech. And he said a lot of things. He talked about shock therapy. Shock therapy is one of this. They've got about 4 or 5 different exchange rates of the peso. You know, there's something called the blue dollar and, you know, many of exchange rates of the peso. And he's, you know, devaluing the currency. Devaluation brings more pain to the people. So he has said to the Argentine people that he's not expecting anything to get better. So I'm sure they are prepared for it, because another thing, the first thing, in fact, he did was to cut government ministries in half. All the times we were saying Apuera, 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 all those ministries he actually said in that viral video of Apuera, Apuera, he's cut all of them. So you've got only 9 substantive ministry now. So it's on the Argentines to react, because the pain is going to be more with all of this happening. But what he told them in the speech, he said it's coming to bring them sorrow that will get better with time. But it's going to be on the Argentine people. But also, Javier Milei should remember he doesn't have parliament. And they're going to fight it out in parliament with him. It's going to be a slugfest. That's what he should remember. And also, he should remember that the Kirchner base is still very strong. And if he doesn't get it right, winning re-election might be difficult for him. That's not about that. Rotus, I'm very happy about the point you raised about gas, because you see, there's a lot of mixed messaging about policies. If they are talking about, you know, not making gas denominated in dollar again and all of that, in one breath, the government is saying, okay, we've pretty much opened up the sector. The state can go and get private investors in all of this. The denomination at which they source the gas is incumbent on the investors. So them now putting their hands in the value chain of this production of gas for power will not bring nothing but problems. And I get your points. Because let's not forget, because we have gas in abundance does not mean it's not still a business. It is a business. Except if they are going to put like a national sustainability plan in place for gas where they want to give a quota for local production of power, just like they did when we had 4 refineries, that quota of over 400 and something thousand barrels of crude per day, except that's what they want. But if you want private sector in the power sector and you're still saying, oh, we'll put our hands on the way pricing of gas will happen, it's not going to bring about the real investors in the market. So I get your concern as regards that. But hey, we'll see with time. We'll see how it pans out.
All right, let me just go to the Puma story. And like you mentioned, even though they've said that it has nothing to do with the war, against Hamas in Israel, when you dig deep into Puma's history, it's owned by Artemis SA, and Artemis SA is owned by Francois Henry Pinault. And guess where he was born? He was born in a poor neighborhood of the southern Gaza town of Khan Yunis. So it would make you understand a little bit. At the end of the day, yes, they would make, I mean, you mentioned the fact that Israel hasn't been to the World Cup for many years, but that didn't stop their sponsorship for many years. And so Puma as a business has indirectly demonstrated who and what they align with regards to the face-off between Israel and Hamas. Also, President Joe Biden has said that Israel will continue to lose support because of its continuous indiscriminate bombing of, the Gaza Strip. So these are not just political undertones, but also businessmen and economic underlying factors, and even private organizations in their own way putting sanctions on Israel because of the war, against Hamas, and now just the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. At the end of the day, people make business decisions, but also relationships and alignment also comes to play. So just to clarify that, despite the explanation given by Puma, there is an underlying connection between the founders or the owners of Puma and Gaza. So obviously this is a clear support from them.
Well, Argentina, the libertarian outsider leading a libertarian coalition in parliament who has taken over, made it very clear when he took office on Sunday that there is no money and that there will be shock therapy and that he was going to take very hard decisions. And, this is a clear indication of hitting the ground running. By Tuesday, he had already devalued the peso. He had already announced cuts to subsidies, all of which to check fiscal deficit. Argentina's inflation is about 150%. When it is annualized, it's about 200%. Argentina is owing the IMF $44 billion. So, there's so much. 2/5 of the entire population is mad in poverty. So you have a large poor population. So that kind of situation obviously, deserves a shock therapy. And it is interesting that Georgina Kristileva, the head of the IMF, has said, these moves by President Milei are bold, and that she welcomes it. Well, what do you expect from the IMF? Shock therapy, of course. But what Milei has promised is that this is in the short term, and that he expects that the economy will turn around. But how do you turn around 150% inflation rate, 44 billion loan from the IMF? So it remains to be seen what this outsider, from the mainstream in Argentinian politics will be able to do with the coalition majority that he has in parliament. Talking about the president, the Minister of Energy meeting with stakeholders in the power sector, a broad range of stakeholders, I think it's a good development because previously he was accused of not consulting enough, of making statements that fly in the face of reality. What is important from the consultative effort that is now ongoing in Abuja is to see that the ministry, the government will be able to listen with regard to the Electricity Act, with regard to the wholesale electricity reform, and to refrain from blaming, trading blames, because this is what has been part of the problem within this sector in Nigeria. The transmission company is blaming the discos are blaming the GENCOs, the discos and the GENCOs are blaming the government, And then we hear about subsidies. And despite the fact that we hear about these subsidies, we, the ordinary people of Nigeria, do not get the benefits of these subsidies. These subsidies appear fictional in terms of the impact on the ordinary man that needs steady power supply for economic growth and development, which is one of the major points in President Tinubu's 8-point agenda. However, this is coming at a good time, this consultation, at a time when only this week, the national grid collapsed completely for the third time in 2023. At a point, we were told we are just 4 megawatts. Before by 6 p.m. on Monday, they managed to bring it up again. And it's a shame that a country of over 200 million people is relying on 3,000 megawatts, 4,000 megawatts. Anyway, thank you, Rotos.